Two, one. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting film journey here on Inside Movies Galore. I am your host for the evening, as we are continuing our month of films that we either were bothered by at one point in time in our viewing of these films, or at least somewhat bothered by them. And I brought to you guys a film that I saw 20 years ago on VHS, ended up owning it on DVD later on, saw it again with Tammy. And I guess at the time, that was like only a year after like the phase of like found footage films was like starting to boom, because Blair Witch had like set the tone for found footage films. No matter whether you hated or loved the film, it kind of like broke the mold at the time. And it was later that I realized that it actually was directed by the Subspecies director Ted Nicolaou, which is interesting as well. But that's besides the point. It is a film that was filmed in 2000. So let's go around. Let's see who also starred in it. Okay, so we have a professor and his team of young, I would have to say students, of the paranormal. We have a psychic named Madison, and a history student named Ryan Larson, another young man who apparently had some ghostly experiences when he was younger, Paul, and Tim, also playing a videographer, going into a particular plantation. So let's see what IMDb says about the film, and then we'll go into first impressions. Okay, so it says something simple. 4 young people spend a night in a haunted mansion, which obviously we know a little bit more goes on. But let's go into first impressions of the film. Dustin, did you want to go ahead and say your first impressions of this film?
I first heard of this movie yesterday when I saw it on our schedule, and so I watched it today. And it's a found footage movie, and it reminded me of Paranormal Activity. How do I put this kindly? It reminded me of Paranormal Activity in that nothing happens until like the last 10 minutes. Like it had some good, like kind of eerie, creepy moments like leading up to it, but it was just kind of, it felt very standard for a found footage movie like that came out. You said this was after Blair Witch, right?
Yeah, because Blair Witch came out in 1999. This came out
it felt like a pretty standard attempt to make that movie again. So I'm kind of curious to find out more of the story behind like who exactly made this one and like what the what was going on. It was kind of a nice twist at the end, which I guess we'll get into later.
Yep.
But I did appreciate and enjoy that. But otherwise, it was just kind of like, this is average. This is fine. I didn't like hate it or anything. It was just kind of like not a lot standing out in my mind. So, but it was fine, and I had to.
Okay. Heading over to you, Jake. Was this a first time watch for you?
Yes. like Dustin and I have only recently heard of this film, I would say before yesterday, but it was probably when you announced that you wanted to do this one, and I had no idea what it was or what it was about or what have you. And of course, since you suggested it as a film that disturbed you, I had some trepidation going in. And in that context, as a film that disturbed our esteemed leader here, I found it unbelievably tame and easy to watch.
Well, you're talking
say,
a 20-year 20 years ago I saw this film. It was in the year 2000 that this came out. I saw it on the Blockbuster shelves, and I had to see it, and I watched it on my own the first time, and I had just gotten into found footage films, so I guess is that the end of your first impression?
I haven't even started, really.
Okay, well, go ahead.
But like I said, but a note on that real quick. We saw last week that my second viewing of Black Swan didn't affect me nearly as much as the first viewing. I wonder if we've stumbled upon one of those second chances months that, like, where everyone's going to end up finding their film much easier the second time around, except for maybe one holdout.
But I think that would be. I think that would be expected, actually, because you know what bothered you before, and you're kind of prepared for it.
You could say that. I think in some cases it's also just a change of mindset. I mean, again, 20 years. In my case, it was about 12 or 13 years of a gap. A lot can change in that time in the way you watch a movie. But anyway, I will say there were parts that really made me cringe. When they're talking about the history of the house, I think they poured that on a little too thick. Like, it wasn't just because it made me cringe. I think they just were trying too hard and poured it on really thick in those scenes. But it does definitely give you an idea of what kind of a house this theoretically is. Other than that, I kind of agree with Dustin. This had a kind of a low rent proto paranormal activity vibe, but it also had that sort of, okay, we're going to be a Blair Witch but in a haunted house vibe. So in
fact, Blair Witch
definitely didn't strike. What's that?
Very briefly, Blair Witch was mentioned in this movie.
Well, yeah, it would actually, and I don't know if this was intentional, but I got the impression that when he mentioned Blair Witch, he was looking dead at the camera, and that was kind of like I think that was like a nod to the audience, but that was just my thought. But I think Blair Witch was a better film. Paranormal Activity was a much better film. Found footage overall is not entirely my bag, and it is really easy for a crappy film to be seen as great if it strikes you right. I found this one watchable and moderately interesting. I'd rank it higher than IMDb does. I think they've got a 3.9.
Yeah.
I'd probably give it a 4 or 5, but it was, I've seen better. I've seen better, I've seen worse. It was kind of like a way to kill an hour and a half,
Indeed.
But anyway, I think that'll about do it for my first impression.
It was nice how this was really efficient with its runtime.
Yeah, it wasn't that long.
Yes, the runtime was nice.
heading over to you, Brandon. Was this the first time watch for you?
Yeah, I first heard about it when you mentioned it. Though Kim knew about it, and she really was into it. So I was like, okay, well, this will be good. We'll watch it together, and I'll be able to see what unnerves Dave. And because I was like, oh my gosh, well, whatever it is. I wasn't thinking you were looking at 20 years ago. I was thinking you were looking. I was like, oh yeah, this film still unnerves me. I'm like, oh,
Well,
this is
the
gonna
first
be.
time I'd seen it was 20 years ago, and I had rented it off of like I said, Blockbuster. It was on their shelves as a VHS. And later I found it on DVD, and whatnot. And you know, it is what it is.
But yeah, that was one of those where I was just like, I was ready for something that was going to be super disturbing. I was like, it's got to be more disturbing than Sallow, because Sallow is just like a kiddie film to Dave. So it's like, this has got to be like something even worse.
Well,
Well, I was
even
kind of ready at least one to kill it.
Salo bothers me in the gross sense of filmmaking. There are films that are there to gross you the fuck out, and that's one of them.
Among other things. But yeah, this one, yeah, I would agree with everybody else's take on it. I mean, I don't mind a good found footage movie. I love the setting and I like the backstory because it's a cool backstory and it does come back, and that's good. But I'll admit, like many found footage movies, and that's the one thing I dislike about that formula, is that they do a lot of nothing for 80% of those films for like that 20% payoff. And I admit I was dozing quite a few times throughout. And if I had to hear that woman say one more time, white light, I was about to strangle somebody because that was goddamn, that annoyed me. But otherwise, it had a pretty cool ending, and I like the premise around it. I'm definitely going to watch it again when I'm a little bit more awake to see if I like it more. I really do think it's like one of those things. Now that I know what it is, now that I understand it, I'll watch it in a better mindset, and probably enjoy it more when I watch it. That's all I got to say about that.
Okay, well, as you guys kind of know my history with the film already, I'll go into what I think about it now. Honestly, I think it's mediocre compared to most found footage films now, and I'm trying to understand why it bothered me at the time. Like like at the time, I kept thinking in my mind that there were moments in this that just kind of just freaked me the fuck out. And okay, yes, there is one moment that still is kind of like, okay, that was cool, but there is a lot of nothing going on. And honestly, the lead psychic just bugged the fuck out of me throughout the entire film. I mean, she reminded me like of one of those tail end of the 60s hippies. Love, man, love, you know. And I don't know. Maybe I'm a little bit more of a cynic when it comes to that type of thinking, and the whole. Okay, I get it. That okay, she's all about protection and trying to say these words over and over just to try to get the house to protect them. But at the end of the day, if it were that benevolent of a house, you know, asking it to, protect you is like asking it not to kill you or not to harm you or anything like that. It already has that intent to do so. So why would you think that anything of it would try to protect you in any way, shape, or form? But yeah. I guess I like the history of the history that goes on beforehand, and I noticed something. It wasn't as if they were just reading some lines. It was like they were actually telling you history. Instead of like someone holding up cue cards and being like, "Okay, this is what you say." This was actually them retelling things to you as if they actually had happened. It wasn't like that at all, and that's why I think it is a little bit different.
You remind me of one of the lines that's one of my favorite lines in a horror film, which was House on Haunted Hill, the remake, where Chris Kattan says, like, "This house is pissed. It has no morals because it's a fucking house." What's fair? Who lives or dies? You know why it's a fucking house. Yes. That is.
I mean, how can these people go into this house expecting it to protect their ass when they know it's that fucking haunted and they know all this bad shit has happened? There is no hope anymore for those lost souls. So, how can you expect any light in the sense of the word? I just don't see it.
You do got to admit, though, that the girl's hippy dippy shtick does make the final twist a little better, because that's kind of amusing in a way. But now I'm curious who you're talking about when you said they're giving you the history, but they're not talking off cue cards. Because to be honest, the people that were reciting the histories were the ones that I felt were just reading off of cue cards. Like, I really felt like the people in the house seemed to be living the characters pretty well. But the girl in the graveyard and the old man, they really felt like they were just reeling something right off a projector. That was my thought, anyway.
I didn't think so. I really felt that these people were recanting them like it was actually history, and I felt that I felt that a little bit back then, but I feel more strongly about it now. It wasn't as if it was an unnatural way for them to recant these tales. It was. I mean, I didn't see. You didn't see their faces go to a specific direction. They were talking to you as if they were in actual, actually talking to you. And
Well,
to me, makes it a slightly better film in that way.
the legend itself is true. It's it's one that's been known. I mean, they use the same lesson in Stay Alive, but they kind of combine that with another legend to kind of do that. But yeah, the legend itself is true enough about the person that was in Louisiana and keeping the slaves like that. That was a true story. With another, they did a couple little twists to change it on their part too, but still. I mean, that might make it more realistic to you because it is true. Now, if they legitimately had ghosts killing the people in the house, that I would have liked even more because then it would be like full on true.
True enough. True enough.
But I don't think anybody would volunteer to die in the haunted house for the movie. That would make it a snuff film.
Although it would have made it an interesting twist per se, that at least one of them like disappeared or whatnot, or to that extent instead of being like driven mad,
You know which one did this really well? A similar movie that I thought did this much better was Grave Encounters. I really, it did the thing where it made you wait a while, but the atmosphere was even creepier, and they started up a little bit earlier, and that was a really good one.
I have not seen that as of yet. I know I've got Grave Encounters 2, but I still have yet to pick up Grave Encounters 1.
2 is good as well. We will have to cover the Grave Encounters movies in the future. I might even be able to get Kim on for that one. She loves those films.
Okay. Well, did we want to kind of start getting into the plot then? Okay. So, of course, we have what I would consider being like the producer of this going around to various different people telling some of the history. And through some of that history, we hear that the St. Francisville plantation is actually a group of plantations how it involves like the hauntings, because it is Louisiana. It was around like the Civil War days and the plantation days, and apparently there one of the focal people they centered around was a woman by the name of Madam, who evidently had a like 40-room mansion, and there were stories that she worked with a doctor and kind of did some like sex change operations, and I guess there might have been some deaths at one point in time. In fact, I almost think that one of those particular stories of Louisiana was one of the ghostly happenings in an American Horror Story season 1 house. I don't know if any of you have actually seen that series, but I think there was something dealing with a doctor that was doing experiments and a madam and all that jazz. So I'm wondering
it got pretty
if that was a different variation of it.
Yeah, they took a lot of tales in that one and also twisted them around a little bit to push them forward.
But that kind of sets up the mood for this investigation. That I'm trying to think. Okay, these kids actually want to go and do this. One is a history major. One is a psychic. Another guy, Paul, he evidently in his introduction videos tells us that he's had some experiences and he just wants to, make sure that there is stuff out there, that it wasn't just his imagination, And I guess there are questions like that, like going through all of them, and they're supposed to spend the night in this place till the break of dawn, like when the light hits the house, And honestly, when they get to when they actually get to the house, they're actually given like a pamphlet of paperwork, which kind of reminds me of the movie The Haunting, because of the paperwork that was given to those people, to do while they were in the house, So, so they're left with food. and they're told that they can't open up windows, and do anything thing of that nature, and they end up evidently walking into the house and finding themselves in the dark, but having, I guess, what you would call some emotional entrances. So what do you all think about this group that's going in to this house, and what do you think about their characters thus far through their introductions, and what say you?
You know what's weird is that hardly any of the characters left a full impression on me, because even the spiritualist, which I thought was saying white light all the time, was not the one saying that. It was the other woman, the blonde. And I guess she was the only one that really made an impression on me, other than the spiritualist kind of giving them flack for trying to eat dinner when they need to do a seance ASAP.
Yeah.
Well, she's the one that was like scared, like right off the bat. Like we've got to sit down and like fucking pray to whatever powers that be to protect our asses, you know. So
Well, they should have asked to protect all of themselves instead of just the asses.
But they end up doing so on her, on her insistence, and shortly after that, that's when they bring out the packet stuff. They've got to resurrect or direct who's the team leader, who's the cameraist, who's going to do what, and where, who's going to go and check out this room and whatnot. And so they begin to explore the house, like in a sense. What do y'all think about this section of when they start to explore the house?
Well, the house is pretty creepy, and so there's some effective stuff in there. Because I live in an apartment building, and every once in a while, like when I first moved here, I would just kind of wander around in the basement, looking at stuff that they were supposed to lock but didn't, and it kind of reminded me a little bit of that. It's like, oh, what's this room for? Kind of stuff like that. You just didn't really know what you were expecting to see, and I don't know. It was kind of fun, but not. There was nothing too freaky. I mean, the thing with the doll on the wall, it was like, what the heck is this? But it turned out to be pretty tame.
Well, supposedly the house was not supposed to have been lived in for 100 years, and yet it looked as clean as a whistle. At least until you got to the attic.
Hey, the ghosts, they got to do their work. If they're going to stay in the house, they got to earn their keep. But as things go, I like horror movies, haunted house movies, because I love the houses, and I enjoyed this one as well. I enjoyed the tour section because of that.
I do agree, though, that it did look way too well maintained.
It was quite lived in, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know about lived in, but it definitely looked like they sent in cleaning crews on a regular basis or something like that. It didn't look like it had been sitting, that's for sure.
Maybe they have a caretaker.
Yeah. Let me rephrase it. It looked like people had been there a few weeks ago, maybe a few years ago, not 100 years ago. It looks somebody had been there. So let's
I think that's right.
Yeah, like I said. Go ahead.
What's up?
I was going to say, like I said, it wasn't until they got to the attic that it actually looked like a possible haunted house, because the attic was very unkept, and there were a few spots where there were some older looking books sitting on the floor, you know,
Yeah.
in a spot like someone had been squatting for a little bit.
Right, I suppose. There's famous book toting squatters. Yeah. But honestly, and I thought about this when I watched it, but I don't think I really put it into words. It was just more of a thought in the back of my mind. But now that I'm thinking about it, the attic and that one room with all the books on the floor, and maybe a couple other areas, it didn't, even that really looked too fresh. Like it didn't look like this is just refuse from 100 years ago. It's more like, oh, someone wanted to make it look messy. You know what I mean? So basically, I guess the long and short of it is the production design was pretty weak, which it might be a little early for me to say that, but well, that seems to be the tangent we're on. But as far as something that we would talk about earlier on, the characters, I don't know. I might have missed something, and I've told everyone all day long it's Monday and I'm tired, so I might have missed something. So if this is repeating anything, I apologize. But the characters all started to annoy me after a while. They were all very. I won't say they were all entirely one note. I think they all had a little bit of complexity, but they all had certain notes that they kept hitting on over and over and over again. Like, the psychic with the kind of hippie type language, the healing spells and the protection spells and all that stuff. Like, she kept leaning really, really, really hard into that. But also, like, early on, she was freaking out over claustrophobia, and then that kind of disappeared. So, like, there was some things that you would think should have been more consistent or gotten stronger as time went on that kind of didn't. I feel like she mentioned it, but it didn't really, But the other one, the blonde, there was the guy who was like the serious ghost hunter who tried to take charge, and he was like the take charge alpha male type.
Mm-hmm.
He was bossy, he was rude, that was kind of his shtick, and that kind of got a little old after a while. But the two students who were just kind of along for the ride, both of them really, by the end of the movie, I was like, why the bleeding hell are either of you here? You know what I mean? I don't think either of them really added much, and she spent half the movie freaking out and going into hysterics by the end, and he spent most of the movie making
snarky.
Yeah,
the blonde
and the guy,
yeah.
I mean, she was great to look at. I'll give her that. But otherwise, the guy just spent most of the time making snarky comments and just kind of, they really weren't even all that funny. He just came off as a guy who was being an ass to be an ass. And again, like, I don't think either of them added anything scientifically. So it really, I think they all kind of did a good job playing the roles. I don't think they did a bad job of acting. It just, every one of the characters got on my nerves by the end. Just, throw that out there.
I was at first, when I first saw this, I didn't have a problem with them like I do now. And them as a group, just I don't know. The guy carrying the video camera, he kept swearing from time to time, and to me, felt like some of his English definitely needed to be learned a little bit more. Maybe.
English, motherfucker, do you speak it?
Well, I don't know. I mean, he was speaking a little bit too much French for my taste to be that kind of a serious videographer, you know. So,
well, if he was from the area, they could actually speak French. I mean, Louisiana, all that stuff.
yeah, maybe. I was talking about his sailor speech.
Yeah. You're talking about French with quotation marks, right?
Yeah.
Right. But yeah. I mean, at first, I thought that Paul being the leader was a good thing, but he came off kind of sexist, anyways. You know.
Yeah.
But he doesn't have that leader like quality, and even he, like, halfway through the shit was saying this white light shit was like nuts to read. I'm just not doing it. You know. So
yeah, he did make a good point early on when they were doing like the pre-interviews. And he made the point that, like, the team has to gel together. It has to work as a team, or it's just not going to work. And that was a good point. And then I feel like as the night went on, they were all proving his point by showing what happens when they don't gel.
Yeah.
well, no, I don't think they all gelled at all as the film went on. But let's dial backwards a bit. So they're exploring these rooms, starting to name them off one by one. Like one of them, didn't they call it like the owl room or something like that, because there was
It looked like a room.
Yeah. And so on and so forth. And I guess they were using some of their equipment, like you could tell that they were getting spikes in one corner, and they were mentioning that there were some cold spots as they were going through like some entrances and in some corners. But unfortunately, when it comes to that type of thing in paranormal videos, oftentimes it's only something that the person experiencing it can, understand, not us as viewers, because we're not like experiencing what they're feeling. I mean, it's kind of hard when you're not in the house with them, and experiencing supposedly the same, occurrences of cold spots here. There was supposedly a moment that the psychic Madeline said that there was a door that creaked. There was another time that she thought she heard her name, and she said it was someone younger. She thought, and shortly after that is when they started smelling old man smell. That scene. What did y'all think about some of this scenery? I mean, I didn't see what she saw. I mean, a lot of the shit that happened supposedly happened off camera anyways. So
I think one of the things that it makes kind of an interesting conundrum if you're trying to do a found footage movie about hauntings is, yeah, like spirits do tend to be notoriously camera shy. I mean, if it was easy to catch them on film, we'd have a lot more, So it's in a film like this where theoretically everything you're seeing is through their lenses, through their cameras. You're going to have to rely a lot on what they say and on their reactions. And that's kind of the challenge, I think, here. And maybe why so much of the film seems to drag and whatnot is it's an interesting challenge that honestly I think this film did not meet most of the time, but it met occasionally. Paranormal Activity did a much better job, I think, of meeting that. But it's like, if you're trying to do this where you're showing everything through the camera, through the recordings,
Well, yeah,
you're gonna miss a lot yourself as the viewer. And yeah, I think that
if you've ever seen a Ghost Adventures episode, have any of you seen a Ghost Adventures episode, or at least a Ghost Hunters episode?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oftentimes,
they'll record like the background of whatever they're filming, and you'll hear like a disembodied voice on the recording, and they'll replay it back. Well, whenever it comes to a spiritual haunting type, I kind of expect a disembodied voice coming back on a recording. Well, I didn't see any of that, or also the orbs. There are spiritual orbs that supposedly, filmed. I would have wanted to see some of that,
I was interested with the way that one guy explained cold spots, because I don't think I've ever actually heard it explained that way before. I think I've heard similar theories, but I don't know that I've heard that said that way. And I was like, that's kind of cool. That's kind of an interesting way of putting it. And now I'm kind of curious about whether that is a widespread belief. About the idea that the ghosts need energy to apparate, and so they draw it from the surrounding area. That's an interesting theory, definitely.
Yeah, that's definitely an interesting theory. So there are definitely sections that they put the various film spots. So they did an exploration of the house. Was there anything that stuck out in the exploration part to any of you? Not really.
I don't really remember. Like, it felt. I really don't remember a lot of specifics about this, which is kind of weird because usually I'm all about that.
Okay. Was it during the exploration of the house that the chair part happened? I'm trying to remember.
That was either their first or second visit to the attic. The exploration would have been
attic that the chair happened. Yeah, I believe so. Oh, so I think it did happen towards the tail end of the exploration aspect of it. And then I think, was it the seance that happened next? Or, yeah.
They tried to eat their dinner, but their dinner was filled with roaches. And then they had the seance because she kept saying, "Oh, we need to have the seance like right now." and he was like, "No, we need to eat first." And then they realized the sandwiches had roaches in them.
I must have missed that part.
I
missed
missed that part too.
Huh.
Because I didn't realize the roaches, but I did realize at the end of the seance when the dead bird from the attic appeared behind them.
Huh.
That was like towards the tail end of the seance footage. They had found a dead bird up in the attic or whatnot. Well, it ended up appearing like down where they were while they were apparently. The seance was a little weird because we never figured out who Charles was, and how he was related to Madeline in any way, shape, or form. At least until maybe later on when she started. Which, spoiler alert, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to spoil the crap out of this movie, but evidently she was when she was on her own and in that room, she started speaking as if to like a third person, and how possibly she looks like the representation of Madam or whatnot, maybe, possibly. Or maybe she looks like the reincarnation of someone that the spirits like reacted to. But that came much later. But they sat down, they did the Ouija board. They started speaking to someone, and she got all like interested in this Charles person because he said that she knew her, or he knew her, and that was kind of curious. So I was wondering if that was going to pop up somewhere down the road. But when they went up, and one of the things that they said that they should do is they should stick together, and that's something that did not happen. They didn't stick together at the end of it. They ended up going off into their own exploration sections. The blonde, who I thought started as like a strong candidate of being someone strong on the team, ended up going to the background and started being a whimpering, simpering fool. Especially when they got up in the attic, she was all like concerned. I think that we're going to actually fall through or something like that. That was on the second thing. What did y'all? Is there anything that I've mentioned that sticks out to you guys at all?
Well, when she was trying to communicate with whatever was in the room, it seemed like we saw like a form of some kind, like something was there. Like I thought that was a cool touch, and it was like super, super brief until everybody showed up and she was just like mysteriously wounded. Like I thought that was kind of cool.
Okay. Yeah, there were some apparitions that supposedly was caught on camera. Like I think there was something even in the secret passageway that the video camera dude eventually found too, that was chasing him or whatnot. But that being said, I do believe that there are moments where they're just standing on the staircase, trying to repeat these words of white light, which I think that's the moment where I said that Paul just, as he was saying them, he was like, "This is fucking ridiculous." Like I'm not going to stand here and say that this stuff. It just doesn't feel like we're doing anything, And then, of course, he was trying to tell his buddy Tim to, come up with him to his attic place, just so that he has someone to go up there with him, because little blonde is kind of hanging back and getting and being scared. Madeline, well, I know she kind of went off on her own too, and I think she was trying to figure out what Charles might want. So is the video camera guy. He in a sense was trying to piss off whatever was in there.
Yeah. Well, they weren't really going off on theoretically, or at least this was my understanding. They were supposed to be trying to cleanse the house, and they were hitting all the different levels. I thought they were trying to hit them all at once to make it a coordinated thing.
Well, yeah,
but this is where it showed that there was teamwork there, and they really did kind of end up all every man for himself kind of, and the whole, it may have worked if they were a cohesive team, but instead it just fell completely to shambles because they couldn't cooperate. Yeah.
Well, yeah, they just weren't working well as a group, and I think that's kind of what led to like the end of the whole situation. And I guess in a sense, I'm not a fan of them actually taking and using words for like the rest of what happened. Towards the end, I'd rather have seen it captured on film exactly what happened instead of wording. It's kind of like that moment at the end of American Sniper. I would have rather liked to have seen that person shot instead of them just telling you, "Oh, this is what happened." I don't know about you, but I rather like it when if something bad is going to happen, show it. Don't hide behind words. Huh?
You mean when it's not ambiguous, or?
Well, yeah, if it's not ambiguous, I mean, if it's too hard to show, okay, then I can understand. But if it's not that hard to show a woman going crazy, or in fact, like being carried off to some insane asylum, then show that.
They might not. They might not have money in the budget for makeup. Yeah.
Spend all the money on the house.
Yeah.
Budget-wise, this was actually okay. Like, this looked pretty believable to me. Like, I thought that was fine, personally.
Well, I mean, like the way they describe it, they said she was all cut up and everything. That definitely would have cost at least a few bucks. But I don't know. That might not have been.
Yeah.
She had like one scratch on her. Yeah, I know. I see what you mean there now that you've clarified. Yeah, they could have been put a little more for that. But
Yeah.
when you actually get like that though, it's not like super like egregious and obvious though. It pretty much is just like red lines on your skin.
I think it could well be that they might have spent the bulk of it. They might have spent a good chunk of it just on getting to use that particular setting. That wouldn't surprise me in the least, but I don't know. And they certainly didn't spend the money on the cameras. But anyway.
I will say once again that my opinion has definitely changed since the first time, or at least the second time I've watched it. It's not the baddest film I've ever seen, and it's not the worst, but it's definitely not what I remembered it being. It's not. the creepiness is more to me in the deliberation of the history, and that's where I take some of that creep factor from. I think the chair thing bothered me at one point in time, and then whatever happened in the end with her and how the whole seance went. And it's like I wish that I had seen more. I wish there was more to this instead of and a lot of it was slow. But I think they were trying to tell their story and try to get you to feel for these characters, and yet none of them, like I think Brandon said, none of them really stand out. I mean, even the blonde in the end is kind of forgettable. So. But what about what do you guys?
That midriff was memorable. What was I going to say? The pacing does give it a little bit more of a documentary vibe, which kind of, I think that does help. But on your thought on the end, I do disagree with you on this statement that you want to see the bad endings. I like it when I don't have to see everything put on film if some stuff is left to the imagination. But I will say with this one, even though Ryan was a little bit of a wasted character and she really wasn't doing anything at the end, the way that she just kind of disappeared from the story at the end was kind of like, huh? Like, what? Like, we know where all three of the other were up to.
Project halfway through or something like that,
Yeah. Was she just like gibbering in the meeting space downstairs, just completely out of it? We don't know, because she just disappeared from the end of the movie. And I'm like, I think that was an area where maybe they could have done. And then the guy upstairs, I'm really having trouble with the names on this. Paul.
Oh, that would be Paul, yeah.
All his bitching and moaning about how he didn't want to go alone. I think he finally did kind of stumble up there alone. But even with him, we know where Madison ended up. We know where where they found him, apparently. But we really don't know what the other two were up to after that point in time. And it's like, even though I like the length of the film, and I didn't want it to be a lot longer, a couple more minutes so that we don't feel like we have all these hanging threads. I disagree with the idea that we shouldn't have had words at the end, but they really feel like a cheat when there's that much dangling thread. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Most definitely.
Okay. I think at this point we can talk about production. Now I know some of us have already talked about it, but what are your thoughts on the production overall, Dustin?
I think this movie actually looks pretty good overall. Like it's not like over the top or like gratuitous. Like with the proper framing, I could believe it if you told me like, yeah, somebody went out and shot this. Like some of those like clearly supernatural stuff, I'd be like, but most of it looks pretty good to me. Like it's about like the quality you get like on a like home device, kind of like that in that time. Like it looks good, I think. And it's kind of one of the strengths that it's actually sold by its presentation.
Okay. What about you, Brandon?
I mean, I think the house was pretty cool. I like the setting. So that was pretty cool. As far as the rest, I mean, it was all right. I mean, it did what it needed to do, so I'm not going to hold anything against it.
Okay. What about you, Jake?
Well, I think I've already kind of mentioned, like, I do think that the house looks too fresh. Like, it really could have. I really like the look of the house, and I think that it looks like a great setting for the story. But again, it doesn't look like an abandoned building. It looks like, I think it was Dustin said, someone must have been there within the last few months to years. I really do think that this, a little more could have been done to dress it up for the film. But it is a cool setting generally. And I do believe that it's believable. The look of it is believable for like a bunch of college kids and, people who wouldn't have had the money to buy the good cameras and whatever. But it doesn't, to me, the camera quality definitely affects the appearance of the film. And I don't think it looks that great. But I can see how if they were aiming for realism, I think they got it with that. If that may, So I have mixed minds about the camera work. But otherwise, I would say, like I said, I think the production overall was, not bad. I've seen better, I've seen worse.
Okay. As far as production goes, I actually don't think that it looks all that bad either. I mean, the house is interesting. The camera work, I guess it wasn't that bad, but I mean, for the time, and from what looks like the budget that they had, I guess it wasn't that bad. It's just, it's not as good as I thought it once was. So, and I guess in a sense that kind of disappoints me because I can't hold a candle to it anymore. But I'm glad that that I was able to share it with you. I was able to see it with fresh eyes, per se, and
for better or for worse.
Yeah, I'm kind of happy I have it in my list of movies. It didn't blow my mind, but it was a decent watch. Like it was a fun time.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so it wasn't a total disappointment.
It worked out as much as I wanted it to.
I couldn't be disappointed. But
I was thinking it was going to be a dud for everyone. So, but you guys are giving it a little bit more praise than I thought than I'm giving it. So, but it is what it is. I don't think there was really any music.
It was nowhere near as dull as Artifacts. Let's put it that way.
Oh god.
Yeah, it was presented as kind of like raw footage, so it didn't really have music, did it?
No, it did not. So
I don't think it did.
That.
Nothing that I would remember.
No, definitely not anything that I remember either. But let's go into favorite characters and our favorite scenes. So, let's start with you, Jake. Was there a favorite character and or favorite scene?
That's tricky. Like I said, if I had to pick a favorite character, it was probably the old dude by the campfire that was telling them the story. Even though he was saying some stuff that I'd really, one, I had already heard everything he was saying, and two, I didn't want to hear it the first time around. He just, I don't know, I just like that dude. I don't know why. As far as favorite scenes, I'm not sure there's anything that is head and shoulders above the rest. Maybe that part where they were having the dinner and that one guy was explaining all that stuff, like I said, where he explained the cold spells and whatever. But basically, he was giving them some basic guidelines to work by as they go in, I guess you could say. And I kind of like the looks of horror on their faces as they were listening to the old guy tell his story. But yeah. And maybe when the chair moved, just because that was a good jump scare that really kind of shook all them. That was kind of, I don't know.
Okay. What about you, Brandon?
The house. Matter of fact, whenever it's a horror movie, I almost always want to pick the house, unless it's House on Haunted Hill, the remake. Then it's Chris Kattan. But definitely the house in this one, though, because the house is definitely the most memorable character for me.
Okay. I guess I'm gonna have to agree with you. The house is actually the house is actually the most influential character of the movie. Although I didn't mind that girl in the graveyard that was talking about Madam. So I guess I go with
enjoying that a little too much.
Huh?
She was enjoying that a little too much.
She still she still yelled it like it was actual history. It wasn't like it was fed to her.
Yeah. Indeed.
By the way, did you give a favorite, Brandon?
Oh, favorite what? Scene?
Yeah.
I was having a hard time thinking of one. I guess the sandwich one that nobody else remembers.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's appropriate for this movie, isn't it?
What's that? It's terrible.
But yeah, the sandwich one was memorable for me because of the roaches in the sandwiches.
Okay. As far as favorite scenes, I think my favorite scene is the chair scene. Just specifically because you know, I cannot explain how they flipped that chair around. Like it looked like it flipped it around like twice. So I can't really figure out like how they did that. So did anyone else have anything else to add?
I was glad I got to see it. I mean, it's interesting when you get something that you've never heard of, and it's there. I mean, it's like when Kim showed me Evil Things for the first time, And I was looking at that, and it's like that was also found footage. It was better than this, but it was still, it's kind of cool to look back and say, oh, there's another one of these from this time period. I guess there was no shortage, but it's kind of cool to see different ones and different takes
Yeah.
of Blair Witch.
Okay. Well, hopefully y'all have enjoyed this film journey here on Inside Movies Galore. I mean, I guess I was disappointed this time, but it doesn't really matter to me. I'm glad I own it. It is an interesting film for its time period, and I just hope that we gave it some proper viewage and gave it a nice discussion. So, everyone, say good night, and hopefully that you can like, share, and subscribe, and be back with us next week as we go on about Tammy's Choice. So
Strangeland.
Let's go into our outros before we say goodnight. Let's start with you, Jake. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Okay, I'm Kotobukijake. I'm the co-host of the YouTube channel SeptumSin versus the World, where we do all kinds of fun stuff related to physical media and movies and all that fun stuff. And we recently posted our Versus Award video. Apologies for the lack of technical finesse on that particular video, but it's still a fun watch, and hopefully y'all can enjoy hearing some good movies shouted out that kind of like this one you might not have thought of, at least a couple of them on there. Also, I keep pretty busy most of the time. Got my full-time gig that pays the bills, but also work with a friend of mine at RVA Homegrown Natives, a native nursery that we started that will be participating in a big event this week called Punks for Plants. We've got several friends in the native plant community, and we've put together it's going to be a fair and a series of concerts taking place, and supposedly karaoke as well, at a local brewery. So that's going to be a lot of fun. Anyone in the area should probably think about dropping by. Also looking forward to the Vogue Festival this weekend. So there's going to be a lot of good music this weekend, hopefully. And, I still make some time to watch films, so I can come join these folks on their, as Dave says, film journeys. And you never know what you're going to get with this group. So that can be not so fun, but it can also be a lot of fun. And this was neither, but it was still interesting, and so a movie I'd never heard of. So yeah, good times.
Alrighty. Heading over to you, Dustin. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
I collect horror movie stuff here around Milwaukee. I have a YouTube channel that I'm not very good at making stuff for right now, but we're trying to fix that. At the Crypt of Horrors. Also, my Instagram for collecting horror movie stuff is the Crypt of Horrors. I'm Duracryptaxis on Twitter, where I spend way too much time just hanging out. And I'm also working on a collaboration of some kind, I don't know what yet, with a local video store just called Video Nerd. Or they might be called Video Store. I'm actually not sure. But they have a lot of really cool horror VHS, Blu-ray, and just all kinds of stuff. And they're downtown by Bullseye here in Milwaukee. And it's great. So I'm looking forward to getting something going with that. So follow me on all those places. And yeah.
Alrighty. And heading over to you, Brandon, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, I'm SeptumSin of SeptumSin versus the World. We love musical media, and we're back, baby. We are back. We had our first official episode of the SeptumSin versus the World show air this past Friday. It was a lot of fun, a lot of work to put together. We do plan on doing more episodes as time goes. Unfortunately, there's a lot of other projects that are going on that impede that for the time being. But once those are out of the way, we're going to be doing them pretty. We're hoping to make it a weekly show. It's not going to be weekly until I've gotten at least some stuff done on a couple of projects. But what you see is what we're going to be doing once we get that going. And of course, those projects include the film Amityville webcam, which I just finished wrapping today. A lot of the major scenes. So we only have a little bit more left, one more major filming day left, and we'll be out of production and into post-production. That's going to be excellent. So we've got a lot of fun there. And then finally, Schlockaholics is also back. We all are reviving from the dead. Of course, Schlock Talk has been going on for a couple of weeks now, but this past Saturday, we did have our first official show back in action again as we covered some shorts from Metrosia Productions, an interesting little group of individuals that Dave actually introduced me to. So it'll be interesting to see where we go from here. I know we've got, I cannot remember. Oh, yeah, it's House Squatch is our next episode of the Polonium movie, and that's going to be on the Saturday the 21st, I believe. So that's going to be a fun time indeed as we look at some house squatches.
Alrighty, and my name is David Strege. I'm one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore, so thank you for coming along with us on this fantabulous journey that we've been having. Hopefully we will discover new and exciting films that we have not watched before on our I guess our getting together and talking about all the scary movies that we've known and whatnot. So I think we have like two more.
Because we have Tammy's, which is next week, and then we have mine, which is the week after. Which I will say, unlike the majority of you, this film actually did cause me some fright, and it was less than 20 years ago. So I can say that at least. And then we have Dustin at the end of the month wrapping us up.
What is your movie, or is it a surprise?
Well, mine is not a surprise. It's Last Shift, which is going to be a fun one to do. Another haunting movie, but a little bit less Blair Witch on that end, and more unstable, creepy atmosphere movie. It's going to be fun, and I'm sure Strangeland next week is also going to be one heck of a time.
But on that note, let us all say a good night, as hopefully we have given the ladies and gentlemen out there something to look into. If you've not seen the movie, at least go and see it at least once. So everyone say good night.
Good night.
One more.
Spooky.